Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Debrief on ABC News Live. I'm Kimberly Brooks. Thanks so much for joining us. California engulfed in flames all week, as you know. We have the latest on those wildfires. Plus, an ABC News poll, a new one, shows exactly how Americans feel about impeachment. And today is the official launch of Apple TV+. But first, the rest of your headlines.
The Bureau of Labor Statistics has released its October jobs report. The economy added 128,000 jobs last month, which exceeded the 75,000 predicted by economists. Employment in motor vehicles and manufacturing decreased due to the General Motors strike, a loss of about 42,000 jobs. The Labor Department says the unemployment rate increased slightly from 3.5% to 3.6%. And for the second straight month, average hourly wages rose 3% from a year ago.
In Chicago, it's back to school today. Mayor Lori Lightfoot announcing the deals and the two-week strike, calling it the right thing.
Nobody wins in a circumstance like this. We put a historic deal on the table. We've done, I think, very good things for our teachers, our staff, and for our students. But I don't think about this for wins for me personally. This has been a hardship on way too many people across our city, particularly our young people.
Agreement comes after the city and teachers union agreed to make up 5 of the 11 school days lost to the job action.
Goodbye, Halloween. Hello, holiday shopping. Retailers are kickstarting the holiday season with huge deals in one of the shortest shopping seasons in years. At Walmart, as part of their early deals drop, you can score some sweet discounts on electronics and toys. With holiday shopping officially in full swing, experts project spending online to hit an all-time high this year of $143.7 billion over the holidays.
We begin with those wildfires in California. Our team has been covering the blaze in northern and the southern parts of the state all week, and firefighters working to exhaustion to contain these flames. And today, those strong Santa Ana winds may be subsiding. So I want to bring in Matt Gutman on the ground in Santa Paula, California with more. Matt?
Hey, Kimberly, this is at least one home that we found that has been destroyed by the fire overnight. Now, what is so incredible about the Maria fire, and that's where we are here near Santa Paula, California, is the speed with which it consumed those 8,000 acres. Most of it farms and hillsides, but obviously some structures destroyed. But 8,000 acres in the space of 6 or 7 hours, maybe even less. That is astonishing. And that's what we had expected from this Santa Ana wind event. But most of the fires we've seen so far were pretty quickly controlled by firefighters. That easy fire near the Ronald Reagan Library was about 1,600 to 1,800 acres, and that was controlled quickly, mostly grass burning. So no major heavy fuel to continue propelling that fire. And we got to witness firsthand the speed with which this fire can gallop across the countryside. We were at that Highway 23, minutes after we got there, literally 120 seconds, 2 minutes. The fire just came racing down the hill. It exploded in a pepper tree. Flames just slanting pretty much sideways over the road at a 45 or 60-degree angle. Firefighters had to retreat. We got dumped on by Phos-Chek, planes as big as DC-10s, just unloading massive quantities of that red sticky stuff that is meant to slow the progress of the fire and actually protect firefighters and in some ways us as well. But it was remarkable to see how quickly it moved, and then to see in action what firefighters are constantly warning about, the ability for wind like that to propel embers and ash across something that's 100 yards wide and start a fire on the other side, which is what happened. Now, firefighters feel like they've got a pretty good handle on this right now. Containment isn't enormous at this point, but what they do have is favorable weather conditions. You can tell for the first time pretty much all week, the winds are way down. There's pretty much nothing going on. Temperatures are low. That's very good for firefighters. And, you know, we've seen the blaze running down hillsides this morning, but not with the incredible speed it was overnight. So things are looking good for this fire. It did move quite quickly, but we think that they've got it under control. And finally, after a week of fires across the Southern California area, it seems like this Santa Ana wind event, the one that has been considered extremely critical, really the first and worst one in recent memory that they called an extremely critical red flag alert, is over. And I can tell you, as someone who lives here, has family here, who told my wife to pack a bag just in case, lots of us are breathing a sigh of relief. Obviously very unfortunate for the family that lives here and in other places, but certainly it could have been so much worse here in Southern California. Kimberly.
Thank you, Matt, for all of that reporting all week. And to see where all of this is headed, I want to bring in our ABC meteorologist, Rob Marciano, with the national forecast. Rob?
Hi, Kimberly. Boy, this was a high-impact Halloween storm impacting millions of Americans really across the northeastern third, if not half, of the country. With big-time wind, big-time cold, big-time flooding rains. We had it all with this, and unfortunately there were some injuries. This is some new video coming to us outside of Philadelphia this morning, where a big tree did a lot of damage to this home, and there was one person inside that was unfortunately injured. And around New York City, we've had a lot of trees down, power outages to at least 600,000 across the storm zone. One 9-year-old girl last night with a tree limb coming down on her in the wind was injured while trick-or-treating. So a dangerous Halloween, certainly with the wind, and it was dicey with the snow in the Midwest. Peoria, Illinois, folks spinning off the roadways there. Chicago had about 3 inches of snow. It's their third coldest Halloween on record, so significant high-impact weather. And we still have it today. Wind warnings and advisories will remain up through the early afternoon from North Carolina up through Maine. Western New York could see 60-plus mile-per-hour winds, big waves across the lakes, and big-time cold. Teens and 20s for wind chills this morning from Chicago to Atlanta, and that cold air is going to push off towards the east. So a chilly Saturday morning, feeling like 27 in Cleveland, 30 in Syracuse, 28 in Charleston, and into the 20s and 30s in Atlanta. All right, we're at the tail end of this Santa Ana wind event, and just when you thought we were out of the woods, another fire breaks out last night. This is the Maria fire in Ventura County. Boy, that looks bad, doesn't it? 8,000 acres at least have been burned, 0% containment. Winds aren't that strong, but they're offshore and they're dry, so red flag warnings are up, and this is causing rapid fire spread. These winds will diminish and make a turn tomorrow and Sunday, which will help the situation. But right now, another serious and large fire burning across Southern California. We are looking for big pattern change and no significant Santa Ana wind event forecast really in the foreseeable future. So that's good news, but we got to get through the last part of this one first. Kimberly, hope you had a great Halloween. Back over to you.
Thank you, Rob. Kind of crazy weather on both coasts, right? All right, guys, we're going to move to Washington. A major step forward in the impeachment probe yesterday. The House approving a resolution laying out the rules for the potential impeachment of President Trump. So I want to bring in Karen Travers at the White House. Karen, so this resolution was adopted. I think a lot of people want to know what happens next.
Yeah, that's certainly what I was hearing this morning on ABC radio. And I was getting a sense, Kimberly, that folks are getting a little antsy. You know, this has been playing out for a couple of weeks now, and the arguments from both sides have been the same. Republicans have been arguing about the process, frustrated and complaining about the rules and the way the Democrats are doing this inquiry. Democrats saying, we're doing our job, we're doing a fact-finding mission, stay tuned, there will be a public phase. Well, that's next. That resolution yesterday moves this process along, and it's some point this month, probably not for another 2 weeks, we will see public hearings. There will be the release of transcripts of the depositions of current and former White House officials that have already taken place behind closed doors. I think people certainly would like to hear from these officials themselves, read the transcripts, and get a sense before they are making up their decisions on this. But of course, everything is done in a very hyper-partisan manner right now.
And just before we go, there's also a new ABC News Washington Post poll that came out that shows where Americans stand on the issue of impeachment.
Evenly split, essentially, Kimberly. You have 49% of Americans who say that Congress should vote to impeach the president and remove him from office. That's a very critical part of it. Two-step process there, of course, the House and then the Senate. 47% say they do not support the Congress taking that move. This was a really interesting poll for a couple of reasons. You also have the president's approval number steady but low, 38%. Drilling down those numbers, though, the one that stood out out to me is the president's approval rating among Republicans. He likes to boast about how he's doing among his base, saying 94% of Republicans support him. Our poll found that just 74% say they approve of the job he is doing. That's a career low right now for President Trump, Kimberly, and that is down from 87% in July, which was a career high. That's a really steep decline in just a couple of months. Of course, Democrats will say that these numbers that ABC and the Post put out today are all coming while this is still a essentially closed-door impeachment inquiry. This is before we start hearing from officials out in the open.
All right, Karen Travers right there at the White House with the latest there. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. And guys, if you haven't been keeping up with the 2020 race, we're going to check in on it now, because if you watch the last debate, a lot of questions about how Senator Elizabeth Warren intends to pay for Medicare for all. Well, today she actually released her plan, and I want to bring in our Deputy Political Director, Mary Alice Parks, in our D.C. Bureau. Mary Alice, I just want you to tell us how this is going to work. That's what everyone wants to know.
Right. Well, Senator Elizabeth Warren has said she has a plan for everything, and now she finally has a plan for this. You're exactly right that the questions continued to dodge her everywhere she went, not only from reporters, but even from voters on the campaign trail were saying day in and day out, you got to tell us how you're going to pay for this, because we know that a Medicare for all plan would be a huge expense for the federal government. In principle, what she is proposing, along with Senator Bernie Sanders, is that the federal government would provide free health insurance to every American, and so there wouldn't be those deductibles and co-pays or insurance premiums, and so that's really expensive. So you're right, we now finally have a plan from Senator Elizabeth Warren that covers about $20 trillion for 10 years. So how does she propose paying for it? Largely, she will change her wealth tax. She already has proposed a tax on the wealthiest Americans. This would increase the tax to 6% on every dollar for those who have $1 billion in assets and savings. She also proposes big cuts in military spending, but that last bullet point there is really important. She is proposing that $8.8 trillion comes from private companies that already currently pay for private insurance for their employees. They would continue to pay. They would just pay the federal government more in taxes so that the federal government in turn could provide health insurance.
Yeah, so this was just released today, but have you heard any of the concerns that people may have about this plan? Like, do people have to abandon their private plans that they have right now?
Sure. A lot of her opponents say that her math doesn't quite add up. There are more moderate Democrats who say that this is just not realistic. And yes, there's also that political concern. There are a lot of Democrats who say this is not a winning position to tell the average American that they would have to give up their private health insurance, which they might like, in order to get health insurance from the federal government. But Senator Warren and Senator Bernie Sanders seem to be full steam ahead with this idea. They say that people don't like their insurance, they just like their doctors.
All right, Mary Alice Parks in our D.C. Bureau, thank you for the insight. And to continue this discussion, I want to bring in the former North Dakota Senator Heidi Heitkamp, also an ABC News contributor. She joins us on the phone. What do you think of this plan?
Well, I think that, once again, the devil's in the details, and it's really too early for people to evaluate. What's probably going to be more interesting is to see what other Democratic candidates do with this plan. Are they going to be hypercritical? What is the mayor going to say? What is Amy Klobuchar going to say? What are people going to say about this plan itself?
Yeah, so another thing that I want to get your opinion on, there's another story that's big in Washington about California Congresswoman Katie Hill resigning after allegedly having a sexual relationship with her staffer. But before she stepped down, we know she gave that powerful speech on the House floor yesterday. So let's take a listen to that.
I will never shirk my responsibility for this sudden ending to my time here. But I have to say more, because this is bigger than me. I am leaving now because of a double standard. I am leaving because I no longer want to be used as a bargaining chip. I'm leaving because I didn't want to be peddled by papers and blogs and websites used by shameless operatives for the dirtiest gutter politics that I've ever seen, and the right-wing media to drive clicks and expand their audience by distributing intimate photos of me taken without my knowledge, let alone my consent, for the sexual entertainment of millions. I'm leaving because of a misogynistic culture that gleefully consumed my naked pictures, capitalized on my sexuality, and enabled my abusive ex to continue that abuse, this time with the entire country watching.
All right, so Senator, those were strong words you heard there. Is she right about that double standard?
I think it's really hard because everybody forgets that a number of Congress people either quit or actually resigned after allegations of some kind of sexual misconduct surfaced. And I'm thinking of people like Joe Barton from Texas. And so I think that where the difference is in who resigns and who doesn't resign. You can say, well, it's a double standard because these people got to stay. They stayed because they stayed. That's pretty simple. And the question is, if in fact nothing is wrong and you can survive an ethics investigation, then there shouldn't be the problem. And one of the things that I really react to in politics is this idea that you can legitimize what you're doing based on what other people's conduct is. I mean, she didn't have a very meaningful defense of her own conduct, and I think that this isn't about gender. This is just about how people need to acquit themselves in public life.
Yeah, and so, she was a freshman congresswoman. What would your advice be to her moving forward?
My advice to her was that if you believe that you have a legitimate defense, don't quit. I mean, that was kind of the lesson of Al Franken. And if you don't want to be in the fight, then get out of the fight and continue to do what you've done in the past and maybe fight the fight. I think that the real issue here is not so much whether she should have resigned based on misconduct in office, but this whole, there's way too much in social media in people's private lives, and what does that look like, and how can you not only fight back against somebody who would engage in this kind of revenge, but also have a teaching moment for young people in particular to be more careful on how you use your images and social media. And so this is a teaching moment in a lot of ways for people who want careers later on, who may be making decisions that could affect their future and their future viability as political candidates.
Yes, indeed. Former Senator Heidi Heitkamp on the phone with us. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate that.
You bet.
And guys, we're going to move on because for all the folks living in Florida, you officially have a new resident, a new neighbor, in fact. President Trump, well, sort of. He recently changed his permanent residence from Manhattan to Palm Beach. And our Aaron Katersky has more details about this. Aaron, good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
What's the significance of this move?
Look, I think he is doing what any New Yorker getting advanced in age is doing. You hightail it to Florida, and that's what you do. You decamp and move out of your high rise, and you go to where the sunshine is. And President Trump filed notice that he is going to move his residency out of New York City, which has been his home base since birth. He was raised in Queens, has lived at Trump Tower since it was built in the 1980s, and now says that he is going to make Palm Beach his permanent residence. This could be for tax purposes, which it is
people say.
For a lot of people who make a lot of money in the city and then move down to Florida. But the president also says he has been treated very badly by the politicians of New York City. Of course, in a deep blue city, he is deeply unpopular.
Yeah. So what are the tax advantages, just for people who don't know, New York compared to Florida?
Well, you live here. I live here. We pay a heck of a lot in income tax, and there is no state or local income tax in Florida, where the president's going to be based at his Mar-a-Lago golf resort. So that's an advantage for one. Governor Cuomo, in response, said, well, good riddance, because you didn't pay taxes here anyway. A claim we can't verify because, of course, the president's never released his tax returns.
Oh, my goodness. So do you think people are generally happy about this?
Well, Trump Tower itself has become kind of a monument for either protest or to take pictures if you love the guy and cheer him on. So I think for, New Yorkers who are against his policies, and look, we know he's deeply unpopular with voters here, probably good riddance. But for others, I think having a president in your city and a tourist attraction. My wife works right next door, so she has to fight the crowds a little bit, a lot of traffic.
Yes.
And there's a reality piece to this too. Post-presidency, if he were to live at Trump Tower, it would almost be a permanent security nightmare for the Secret Service and the police. Having him in Florida makes it a little bit easier.
Yes, and does he keep the place here as well?
We'll wait and see. I would think he's never going to give up Trump Tower. That was his baby, the building that he built and that made his mark in New York City real estate. It kind of made him his own man away from his father's legacy.
Yes.
There are other implications, could make inheritance easier for his children, not to get too far down the road in his life, but the estate taxes in New York don't exist in Florida either.
All right, well, certainly making news. Aaron Katersky with the details. Thank you so much for bringing it to us. We appreciate it.
Nice to see you,
Good to see you, too. And guys, we're going to move overseas to Syria. We're just 4 days after the leader of ISIS was killed during a raid by U.S. forces. The terrorist organization now naming a new successor. So our Ian panel is on the ground in Iraq with more details. Ian?
Yeah, hi there, Kimberly. We now know that a new ISIS leader has been announced. This coming just days after Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi blew himself up as Delta Force commandos closed in. So we've had a newly released audio message from ISIS for the first time acknowledging that Baghdadi is dead. Secondly, announcing that Abu Ibrahim al-Hashimi al-Qurashi is the new leader, although very little is known about him. Later in that same message, the group threatening the United States and warning not to be too happy or arrogant, insulting the US as the joke of nations and saying America's fate is controlled by, quotes, a stupid old man who goes to sleep with one opinion and wakes up with another. Now, while US military commanders believe that the fight against ISIS is far from over, they are ready for whatever comes next. And as if to underscore that threat, we got news overnight of 2 raids against ISIS cells here in Iraq, with clashes on the ground and air raids conducted. That threat still very much alive. And don't forget that the acting director of the US Counter-Terrorism Center said that he thinks there are as many as 14,000 ISIS fighters here in Iraq and across the border in Syria. Kimberly?
All right, Ian, thank you for that reporting. And guys, before we go, we move on to a big day for Tim Cook and the crew, because today is the official launch of Apple TV+. So lots of excitement and lots of questions, which is why I'm bringing in digital trends editor Matt Katz. Matt, good to see you. I just want to start with the basics. How does this work? And more importantly, how much does it cost?
So it's kind of like any other streaming service, like a Netflix or a Hulu. You can access it on almost any Apple device, on your Roku, your Amazon Fire Stick. So all you have to do is download the Apple TV app, open it up, and sign up. Apple is giving people a free first week. After that, it's $5 a month, which is less expensive than most streaming services, although you're getting a pretty small offering of 8 shows and 1 movie for that price.
Yeah, so one of those shows is the morning show. I went to the premiere on Monday. It's absolutely incredible with Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon. But what I want to ask you is, do you think that the shows they offer is enough for people to add yet another subscription to their lineup? People have HBO, Max is coming out, Disney Plus is coming out, they have Netflix. What makes this stand apart?
Right now, I think what Apple is going for is prestige. You've got the morning show. You've got C, which stars Jason Momoa of Aquaman and Game of Thrones fame. And they're putting a lot of money into these shows. Both of those shows are reportedly $15 million an episode budget-wise. They're hoping that you will sign up to see these shows. Whether or not people do that, we're not really sure. Like I said before, some of these streaming networks offer just tons of content. Netflix has hundreds and hundreds of shows, whereas this is just 8. They're banking on the fact that you'll think these 8 shows are incredible and worth the $5 a month.
Does it make sense if you're not an Apple customer?
Right now, at digitaltrends.com, you can see our reviews. We've taken a look at all of our different shows, and right now it's not really that compelling of an offer. For $5 a month, you can get, put that money towards another streaming service and get a lot more. Unless you are a big fan of the people behind these shows, or you're really interested in the shows themselves, you might want to hold off until there's more content available.
And of course, before we go, I got to see what you're doing. Are you adding Apple TV Plus to your own lineup?
I'm going to wait. I'm really excited for the launch of Disney Plus. I think that's going to be kind of the must-have streaming service. Right now, Apple TV Plus is not that compelling until they add maybe a few more shows that can hold at least my attention.
All right, Matt Katz with Digital Trends, thank you so much. And guys, a quick disclosure, Disney is the parent company of ABC News. All right, it's the weekend, it's Friday, so guys, continue to take care of yourselves. And if you're around, you can stick around for the briefing room at 3:30 p.m. Then you can check out World News Prime at 8 p.m. And if you want to stay updated on all of these headlines, you can go to abcnews.com or download the app. I'm Kimberly Brooks, and I'll see you next week.